Good evening and welcome to this British Academy event. I'm Guylaine Boddington, Creative Director of Body Data Space, a reader at University of Greenwich and a studio expert at BBC Digital Planet for the BBC World Service. It's a pleasure to be here tonight with you to chair this unique creative event, which forms part of the Being Human Festival, the UK's only festival of the humanities. Being Human celebrates innovative research in literature, languages, history, music, and more, with over 200 events taking place across the whole country, the whole of the UK, each November. This year, all activities are, of course, online, and you can view the programme, which runs right through to the 22nd of November, so you've got a few more days still, on the Being Human Festival website. Our event this evening delves into the world of typewriter art and music. We'll find out how typewriters have come to be used for a surprisingly wide variety of purposes. And in particular, we'll discover how typewriters are being used in creative ways by artists and musicians today. We'll have a chance to watch a work of art taking place and enjoy musical performances using only this most versatile and melodious instrument, the mechanical typewriter. I recently read that we can all learn from the example of Ernest Hemingway, who used to type up passages of his favourite authors so he could feel their greatness through his fingertips. Apparently, it helps one seed into one's consciousness, deep into the subconsciousness, the style of that writer. So tonight we have the opportunity to seal into our consciousnesses the music of a typewriter, deep down and deeper into our subconscious. So a couple of instructions about the event before we start. Throughout the event, we will take a selection of questions from the audience, and you can submit these by using the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen, the button at the bottom of your screen, at the bottom of your dashboard. If your question is for a particular person, please do name and indicate who they are with your question so that we can pass that through well. So, to begin, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Vaibhav Singh to our virtual stage tonight. Vaibhav is going to start our event today. He's a British Academy postdoctorate fellow and a research fellow in typography and graphic communication at the University of Greenwich. Vaibhav is going to set the scene for us with a short talk about how the typewriter came to be used in creative ways, and especially in association with art and music. Vaibhav, can I hand over to you?
I'm really delighted to be here, especially with the artists and musicians who are the veritable rock stars of the typewriter world. So I'll make my bit very short. For most people today, typewriters are connected with nostalgia, the retro charm of a bygone era, the clackety-clack, the keyboard. Although that percussive quality is music to your ears, there is indeed a closer between typewriters and music than we commonly realize, and as well as typewriters and art. And for researchers like me, Typewriters bring together histories of communication, design, technology, as well as ways in which the body and the senses have been engaged in our interaction with machines, which are being redefined at every passing era. So I've got a few things to show, which I will run through now. The musical analogy of composing text on a keyboard as if composing music on a piano is today just evocative, perhaps, but it was quite literal at the beginning. Piano keys were precisely what was used as the physical mechanism in early writing machines. Here, for example, is the 1868 patent model by Scholz and Glidden that can be seen at Smithsonian's American History Museum. Now, this is the prototype of the writing machine that would go on to become the first commercially successful typewriter produced by Remington in 1870s. So that model only has piano keys, of course, uh, because it's a demonstration model. But early writing machines followed similar approaches and were referred to as literary pianos or harpsichords, like the cembalo scrivano, a writing machine devised in 1855 that you can see in Museo Scienza in Milan today. The direct connections between musical instruments and these machines are quite evident. Here, for example, you can see in a later patent model by of the Scholz typewriter, the apparatus is very clearly composed of key bars and hammers that are quite like a piano mechanism, really. Now, this was, of course, not a new association between the letters of the alphabet and the keys on a piano keyboard. The connection already had an established precedent in printing telegraph, which you can see here from the Science Museum in London. The letters were arranged in alphabetical order, but the configuration of the piano keys divides them into what would then become rows of letters on the typewriter. So this is not to suggest that there was only one standard sort of model of the typewriter. As you can see in a small selection here, there was quite a large variety of mechanisms and configurations that have existed in typewriters across their history. Adaptations to specific uses is something of a constant in this history. Now, one can find machines with slots, with styluses, with dials to make different kinds of marks, write different kinds of scripts, as you see here. But all of it is still generally in connection with and retaining the percussive element, which I mentioned earlier, which is the basis of the strike on mechanism in typewriters, as well as various musical instruments. So adaptations of the typewriter have extended to all kinds of possibilities across languages and scripts and notation systems. And there is really a broad range of exciting combinations of mechanical ingenuity and conceptual rethinking, as well as commercial adventurism in all of this, of course. But it's quite the typewriter pretty old in public imagination. After all, we still use many of the ideas that were introduced by typewriters on our digital devices, virtual keys even to this day. So it's a curious space that typewriters occupy between writing and printing and drawing, and that is something that artists and inventors alike have explored with often quite fantastical interventions, like this one, for example, which is a typewriter for musical notations. Now, it may look like a cross between a trumpet and a telephone and perhaps a combination lock, but it's a machine designed for a great deal of variation and precision that's necessary for musical notations. But that's not the only direction of artistic interventions in the typewriter's history. A range of playful variations quite often emerged from communities of practice, from everyday users of the machines. Here, for example, is a machine called Typotune, which was devised by a stenographer in the late 1930s. It's an actual QWERTY keyboard where instead of hammering out words, you can play a tune. And in fact, I have these last two machines with me today, try out and demo a few things live if we can. Right. So, for example, this is the machine that I was talking about. This is the uh, dual keyboard system here, which allows you to move both up and down to position your various symbols vertically, and then three different spaces to move laterally. So this is the sort of mechanism which allows people to type, you know, music notations right away. And this here is the typer tune, which actually plays a quick tune. So it's actually quite a nice diversion. And with that, I think let switch back to the camera and hand over to you, Ghislaine.
Well, I mean, it's just fantastic to see those two typewriters there. I've really enjoyed that actually. So, and you've got this whole collection. Do you keep this in your home, Vaibhav? Is this a special, unique collection for you at home? Hello, can you still hear me? Okay, Vaibhav,
Sorry, I can't hear. If
you can't hear.
I can't hear you, Ghislaine.
Okay, so we'll get Joe and Graham to look at that. Can you hear me now? No. I think we've lost his hearing side. Well, not Vibak's hearing, of course, but hopefully we will have him back in a minute, um, because I want to ask him about the the the, the amazingness of what it is about keyboards that actually really draw us in. Because I'm sure all of us have got memories from even when we're children of these little plastic keyboards that you get given in a Christmas stocking or that are made by the big toy manufacturers, and how much, I mean, actually, even now, how many of us see children around us, our nieces and nephews, etc., actually playing with these obsessively. Actually, this incredible thing of touching a set of keys and making a set of sounds come out of it in musical terms. But I'd like also to talk to Vaibhav about actually the creative use of the typewriter overall. Now, if we can't come back to him, I'll wait for Joe to let me know that we may need to move forward and start to talk to Keira and come back to Vaibhav in a bit. Hello, hello. Can you hear us now? He's just logged in, so let's give it a minute and see if the sound comes back. No, I don't think. Vaibhav, can you hear us now? No. So, would we be okay, Keira? Could we move forward to you and come back to Vaibhav when he's got his sound working again? Hello, Keira. Hi. Now look at
Hi.
you. Yeah, there you are in your studio for us. Yeah. And
Yeah.
again, with another typewriter to see. This is a great, considering we are here virtually online. Actually, this is wonderful to be able to see all around you the work that you're doing with typewriters. Hey.
Well, it's lovely
So
to
I'm
have
really
you.
pleased to be able to talk to you because I've known your work for a while, been completely fascinated by it. Yeah. And so I know you've got a film to show us, which we're going to play as we talk. Yes. Is that good for you?
Perfect. Yeah.
Wonderful. So you are one of the main contemporary practitioners, obviously, in this area, Keira Rathbone. Keira, you're a fine artist actually originally, and you've been working developing this unique drawing technique with typewriters using a manual typewriter, yeah, for 17 years. And
Yeah.
today, let's talk about your work as we watch the video. How actually did you start doing this? Can you just explain what it was that got you into this?
It was a chance sort of thing, actually, because the reason I had a typewriter in the first place was because I used to be an avid charity shopper when I was a teenager,
Yeah.
and it was a lovely little portable orange silver reed. I can't remember the model. I'm sorry. But it was £5, and I thought I'll have that. And but I didn't think anything more of it until I saw somebody in my art studios at uni typing maybe notes for her sketchbook, and that just instantly made me want to grab my typewriter uh, and start bashing away with it. But I never for one second thought I would do drawings with it. That just happened just by, it was a sort of pure wanting, like you said about children, they just want to touch the keys, and it's a magic machine, isn't it? Like, it's got the printing is happening as you type. I mean, how modern is that? And I think I was just enjoying that. Yeah, just the shapes and the textures of the characters, and I forgot all about words. And for me, that was really exciting because I always struggled a bit with words. So, and then it just actually gradually drew me back until I was drawing with it. So that was kind of how it all began.
So we can see here in the film a little drawing emerging. Thank you for sharing this with us. So, and it's fascinating actually. So you're using the typewriter in a lateral and vertical, on the lateral and vertical plane, and I watched a couple of videos in advance too. And most of the time, are you using one finger to do this work?
Yeah, that's the finger. That's the one. Yeah, people think you're using both hands, but I'm using my left hand to move up and down and
Right.
sort of manipulating the movement of the Clayton as I'm selecting the characters for, as I say, the texture, tone. It's very instinctive, and it quickly became a fluid movement. So that sped up the time lapse there. Um, but it is still quite a quick decisions. It's happening like that. Yeah.
So actually, as you're using one finger on the keyboard and the other hand to do the movement of the vertical and the horizontal, but you're also looking directly at the subject that you're creating the picture around. So
Nearly
you've got,
always from life, yeah, where possible from life. So I'll be in the street or in front of someone's eye, and just reading and translating. I sort of soak it up and type it out, I say,
so
onto the page.
it's exactly that. It's coming in through your eyes and it comes out through your fingers, and the typewriter is the tool that then creates for you.
Yeah, and it's interesting what you said about the seed of consciousness, because when I'm typing, especially figures, I do a lot of typing figures in my scenes from life and before they move, and I love that. It's so capturing them in as fewer characters as possible. And when I look back on these figures, I can remember the person. I can see that person in my memory. So what you said about the seed of consciousness, it really, really resonated.
Now, I'm really aware of this myself, having, in the age group I'm in, and I'm sure several of the audience too, are over 50. I really do remember through writing. So I'm very aware of that kind of reflex that becomes body memory, basically, from writing things down, constantly writing stuff still, but then really not reading it again because it's the way it enters into the brain. Yes. So
Yeah,
now here you're doing a picture of Michael Rosen, is that right?
it is. Yeah, the first ever time I've shown it actually.
So that's emerging in front of us on screen. And so, how do you pick your subjects for your work?
It's sort of evolved over the years. So sometimes it's based on where I live. It's quite often so if I live in the country, then it's going to be the sea and the coast. And but I've been in London for 10 years, and there's a lot of city scenes. But I'll take it on holiday with me, much to the annoyance of my family. Sneak it in the luggage, and then also circumstances. So if I'm invited somewhere to an event, then I'll type just whatever's there. Commissions have been my bread and butter over the years and helped me
Mhm.
sustain my practice. So that's kind of shown me quite a lot of subjects and areas that I may never have actually even explored. So I'm always grateful for them. But this year, I have to say, has been obviously for some reason or another a bit different, and
Yeah.
it's made me think much more about um, reflecting and portraying the time that we're living in now. And that's, I mean, that's the job of the artist, isn't it? To um, place yourself in a moment in time. And yeah, I feel that call. So I actually did a competition to people that follow me, asking whether they'd like to forget this year or reflect on it next year for my calendar. And I got all these amazing responses back. And amongst others, someone mentioned about Michael Rosen, had got COVID and almost died.
Yeah.
And that amazing poem that he did, "These Are the Hands," about the NHS, and that was just one of those moments where it's like I have to type him. So here we are.
Well, that's special, actually. That's a very special story. Thank you for sharing that with us. And actually, I just wanted to see, are you ever working in other mediums? I mean, because I'm sure that many people seeing these works, maybe not before they see them right close up, will think they're illustrations. Yeah. Do you actually work with pencil or with other mediums as well? Or are you really focused on this amazing output through the typewriter?
I've always sketched, pencil sketch, and always will. So that's kind of going on and sometimes my preliminary sketches for Typics are, and then I think, why don't I just paint? Why don't I just get back to the painting? Because that's where I came from. But I think the my sort of sniffing out where this is going, the journey has been so interesting, and it keeps me interested and motivated and intrigued that I'm going to keep doing it until that feeling subsides, and I might go to painting or other mediums. But as it stands, I'm trying to push my work into other areas. So by collaboration or I was about to do a performance in Hammersmith with morph suits that had screen printed typed characters all over them, so they'd become my figures that come to life. So I got some performers, and we were going to do it, but we're probably going to do it in spring now. So it's kind of using my medium to go elsewhere. Yeah, I call it travels by typewriter.
Sorry, can you say that again? Travel for the typewriter.
That's it. Travels by typewriter.
Travels by typewriter. Yeah. So you are actually, yes, you're very able to put it in your bag and go with it wherever, like you said, even on the family holidays, etc. Although I'm sure
Yeah.
that there's others around you with their similarly mobile typing machines of today. The iPads and the laptops are probably in your family's bags as well. So, so there we can see now the finished picture of Michael. It's amazing, absolutely special. Do you ever know how many strokes there are in any picture?
Oh no, I don't. But somebody I met years and years ago actually asked that and figured it out for me, and because he wanted to
Right.
know words per minute, but obviously it's not words. So strokes, I
No.
don't know. Yeah, I'd have to get some sort of machine to do that.
Well, I'm just going to check into the chat room because I've got another question for you, but I just want to check and see whether there's any questions from the audience yet. So, no, we're all right, actually. So, do you know other artists working like you in this way? And are, in other countries, or are you totally unique with this work?
When I first started, I couldn't find anybody on the internet or anywhere except for a book that was published in 70 something called Typewriter Art. Um, and then when I started getting some exposure around 2007 or 8, um, I just, yeah, after that, I sort of noticed that there were a few popping up around. So I'm aware of a couple of others in England, and I think there's a guy in Germany. Um, but yeah, I'm not
And,
too
and
familiar with their actual work. Yeah.
And can you see where it would go next in, say, 10 years' time? What do you see out there which make you go, oh, is that a future of this area?
Do you mean in my own work or out there in the?
Out there in general. I mean, I was thinking back historically, there's some link ups, and the one thing that comes to mind is like the concrete poetry scene, which is
Oh
using visuals of, we're using visuals with the words on the page, making visuals, but it is poetry too. Yeah, so that double thing where it's a visual on the page and it's a poem at the same time. But I was wondering if
sort
you
of.
had.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all going to be. I think I kind of see this thing where we're all going to become a bit more connected to what we're writing, and the strokes of the characters of the actual handwriting. And I just think people are going to start getting much more interested in the detail. I don't know, maybe they won't. I can't really see into the future.
That actually does link into a question that's come up, which is says, Keira, this is incredible. How fast is this film?
Uh,
How speeded up is it? That's one question from someone.
oh, I can tell you that it's times four.
Times four. So
I
it's
don't know
it's
what that
four times
is for the app
your
that I had.
speed. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And how do you decide on which letters to use? And how would I try and do something like this? So, for somebody who wanted to just try for the first time, and which letters do you use for which bits of the pictures?
I would say I wouldn't. I know it sounds like I'm being protective, but I wouldn't want to even tell you. I'd rather you went and just felt your way around and found like which characters speak to you, what you're looking at, how would you mark that down and go for it? Because we've got some good shapes here and tones and textures, so I think it'd be interesting to see what the individual came out with. But I mean, if you're going to push me, I don't know if you're pushing me, but like
No,
underscores
no,
are
no.
great horizontal lines.
And how do you make the frowns and the beautiful
Oh,
markings on the face that make it really look so special, actually, so real?
that's that's a combination of underscores, hyphens, equal signs if I really want to go deep. And then we've got some vertical. We've got some lowercase l's, some brackets, and some just like the odd little ex. What's the word? Punctuation mark.
Exclamation marks.
Oh,
Yeah,
that one.
yeah, with a dot. Yeah. And actually, this is a very baseline question. I wanted to ask this too. Is actually, do you struggle finding the right materials? Like, is it difficult to source the ribbons for the typewriters today?
No, not at
No.
all. I
Good.
mean,
Yeah,
depends
yeah.
on your machine, but I only really use these portable machines, so it's fairly easy to go on eBay and find some help out
Right.
there.
Yeah, yeah.
They've even
And I
got
want
some
to ask
coloured
you
ones.
something. Do you use Tipex papers? Do you remember Tipex papers?
I do actually, yeah, because my gran, who lived with me when I was a kid, well, I grew up with her. She had, she used to write the airmail letters, and she had the little strips, they're little tiny little, and you had to position it
Yes.
just in the right
Yeah.
place, and you got one chance, didn't you?
Yeah.
And
You
you
have
could
to
still
press.
see where you'd made the correction, couldn't you?
My children have no idea what Tipex papers are, of course. They think it's one of those things like cassettes, which is no longer understood. So, right, one
Yeah.
last question. Have you got an exhibition coming up in the near future? Now, I guess that's quite a hard question, looking at what's ahead in this year. But have you got something planned or some? I mean, you've got a great website, so I know people can go there and see a lot of your amazing work.
I had two, thank you. I had two exhibitions planned, but they postponed. So I guess
Mm.
if anyone wants to make come and have a look, then they can follow me on Instagram or Twitter,
Right.
and
Yeah.
that's where I put all the latest info. So
Now
yeah,
that makes sense. Instagram sounds like a really good idea, actually, because there you've got the imagery too. But do go and see the website. And I know Keira's got some very interesting videos too, especially like it when you're working on the street and people are coming up to you and asking you and talking to you. It's really great. So thank you very much, Keira.
I'll just say one quick thing.
Yes, of
Is
course.
that the calendar that I've been working on is about to come out, and that's kind of like a whole body of work in itself. So that's sort of like where I'm putting all my efforts in at the moment. So I will exhibit all of those typics that I've done for that next year probably, but they'll all be in the calendar, the 2021 calendar.
Well, that's a definite push, and we should all look for that. Maybe on your website, find a link.
Yeah,
Yeah. So great.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. So,
Thanks.
first of all, I'm going to check whether Vaibhav is back and has sound and can join us, because it would be really good just to actually go back a little bit and ask a couple of questions. Hello, are you with us? Oh, wonderful. Great.
Yes, I am.
Great, fantastic. So if we all just cast back our memories just 15 minutes ago when we actually had this incredible set of slides from Vaibhav, and also you showed us two demonstrations directly in front of you using two machines. So you were telling us about different range of creative interventions that have been happening with typewriters. Why do you think that this has been the case? What is it that actually is really bringing people to that in a creative way, and have been for years? That's what you've shown us.
Yeah, so I think one of the key things, key reasons behind why there's so much innovation within that closed system of mechanical typewriters is probably because it's very accessible in a way that a lot of the black box of technology that we have today, may not be. So one of the ways where people have actually engaged with the typewriters, as I mentioned, is through actual use. So communities of practice of users who are actually engaging with this particular machine can very simply sort of figure out the logic behind the mechanism and their particular needs, whether they are for a specific kind of a notation system, or whether it's to actually have a whole use of the same machine. It's still doable. In some senses, it's like a system that is very, very accessible, where people have actually made interventions. But the second more important reason, I think, is that the typewriter as a machine itself is ridden with limitations. And those limitations, as many artists and designers will tell you, are really exciting to work with. Because if you have a machine that has limitations, you kind of have that, sort of urge to change, an urge to add and modify that. And I think that's been one of the key things where people have felt strong enough and able enough to kind of go and modify their own machines.
Linked to the fact that maybe because it was originally this, from the beginning, a machine that you could have in your home, you could have in your office, you could move around with you. Probably one of the first things that became more like, well, now we're all used to it. iPads, personal computers, our phones, but one of the first things that you really did, could put in a bag and take with you wherever with you. So it became, you're right, something that then you might just start to play with. I understand that impetus now. Yes. So the golden age of typewriters is the 50s and 70s. And I think most of us have an image in our heads, especially if you're over 40, of, the actual typewriter and the female receptionist doing the stuff, the stock photo that's used out there from, it might be 50s, 60s, 70s, but feels very old fashioned now. But even then, I know you were pointing out to us it was embraced as an artistic medium, but what's this going to be like in the future? I mean, if we're looking, from telegraph, the first kind of tappy things that were happening, right through to now AI voice recognition and sensors where people can type onto tabletops, etc. How do you see this moving forward?
Yeah, I think that's a open question, but in a sense, you could argue that because typewriters are, materially, they were produced in such large quantities that if nothing else, typewriters are going to be with us for a certain amount of sure in the future. There is already a very sort of strong and thriving community of collectors, of people who are researching these machines, are interested in this, in collecting old typewriters, but also kind of going back typewriters as a different way of engaging with text, right? So we've got a large movement of people who are looking to have free machines to work with, for example, especially writers and people who create work with text-based media. So there's that aspect, and there is the aspect of the material itself. Old typewriters, because they've existed in such large numbers, also kind of lend themselves to reuse, to kind of reinterpretations. So there are people who are, there are artists who are actually looking at sculptures out of old typewriters, who are kind of working from a sort of a steampunk side of things.
Yeah.
They're reading it for wholly different purposes. So, I mean, I think that does kind of indicate a certain amount of, longevity to the machines.
So yeah, that's really helpful, because I think you're right. It's something quite obsessive. I remember 10 years ago when my son was 6. Then we lost him in a secondhand shop, an old vintage shop, and then we heard this tapping, and he was under a chair with a typewriter, and we couldn't get him out. He was just, so there is something totally fascinating. So there's a couple of questions for you, actually fairly practical. I'm leaning forward so I can see the font actually here. Is it true that QWERTY was designed to slow down the typist and thus reduce the hammers getting stuck together? Do you know the answer to that one?
Yeah, well, that's a detested question, but I think the answer is very much commonsensical, in the sense that no machine really was designed to slow things down, in the history of technology. So I think there is very little to kind of sort of validate that idea. There are quite a lot of urban myths and stories around why this particular arrangement, QWERT, etc., has actually come into being, because there really isn't a very clear sense of what the logic is behind this arrangement, and what kind of documentation do we have to prove what happened. But I think the arguments that most researchers have made are based around the fact that it was not something that was devised out of the blue, as is often sort of suggested. So it's not one inventor sitting down and kind of just kind of coming up with this arrangement, but in fact this kind of drew a lot on the earlier arrangement of the telegraph keyboard. So as I showed in my slides, one of the slides, there's actually a very interesting kind of way to relate back to that old alphabetical arrangement, which kind of loops back on itself. It goes A, B, C, D, M, N, and then kind of turns back in a apostrophodon way. And that kind of does make an appearance on, the 2 bottom rows of even today's keyboard. So you can actually trace those letters and those arrangements very much from those early days of the telegraphic piano keyboard to our today. But of course, additions, and there's movements, and there's all kinds of reconfigurations happening over 150 years. So there's a lot of arbitrariness, but also a lot of science of kind of frequency counts, and depending on the language, what kind of character combinations are more frequently. So there's quite a bit of that's happened. But on the whole, the QWERTY keyboard has kind of kept its presence in our everyday life, mainly because of inertia, mainly because of the fact that we are so used to it that it's really difficult, even if you prove scientifically, as the Dvorak keyboard had sort of suggested, that there are ways to reduce effort, make the typing speed quicker, for example. But there is something to human habit and practice that kind of helps.
Well, I've got one last question for you. It's from the chat room. It's from Morgane Pearson, and she asks, what is your favorite one in your collection? What is your favorite typewriter? Do you have
that's
a favorite, or is that a really hard different. Yeah. I mean, I have to
I
say
think
I
that's
was
difficult.
completely amazed. The one that does the musical notation seemed very special, but is there like one that you go back to again and again, just as your favorite kind of pet?
Yeah, I think there are several actually. That's a problem when you if you're collecting typewriters, that there's a never-ending assortment of typewriters that you actually go back to quite a lot. In my case, of course, there are typewriters, especially for different writing systems, which are resonate. Chinese and Japanese typewriters are something that I'm quite fascinated by. But very early typewriters, index typewriters, that was sort of not keyboard based, but I find that there's a lot that you could find in the ways that things were thought about, mechanisms, the arrangements, all of that kind of really interesting to look at in typewriters like, say, the Merit or
Right. Yeah.
the Odell, all of these typewriters, which basically are very mechanisms, but they do tell us what people, how do you really
Thank you.
text?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Vaibhav. I'm going to move on now to our last guest for the night. And last but not least, actually, we turn to the Boston Typewriter Orchestra. And founded in 2004, this orchestra uses mechanical typewriters to create music, which combines elements, not just music, they're working what we say interdisciplinary, with performance, with comedy and satire. And hello to you both, Brendan and Derek. You're both there with me and can hear me fine? Great, wonderful. Yep. And you're in Boston tonight, joining us?
Boston
yeah,
area,
Boston,
yep.
Massachusetts. Not Boston, UK.
Massachusetts. No, Boston, Massachusetts. Hello. So you've recorded a special performance for us to premiere tonight, which is wonderful. Introducing both of you, Brendan Quilly and Derek Albertelli. I know that, first of all, we need to acknowledge that you've had a recent sad loss in the orchestra and that we're going to dedicate this part of the evening to him. Did you want to say a few words, Brendan?
Yeah, well, I mean, we lost a very close friend and a huge part of our act, Jeff Breeze. He was a pillar in the Boston music scene, and as you'll see in this clip, he's the large guy with sunglasses, and it's going to be tough to. Well, we don't want to replace him, but it's going to be tough to find, to go on without him. So let's roll the clip, shall we?
Let's watch the butterfly bit.
that was the Public Enemy version, right? Yeah.
Oh, well, that's wonderful.
In case you missed that last little bit, that's our Public Enemy remix because you can hear the sirens going throughout the whole thing. I think the cops were coming when we were doing that, and they were like trying to break up our guerrilla performance.
Right, there we are. This wonderful melange of sound, and you're doing these what you call guerrilla performances. So tell us, actually, where's this coming from? Derek, can you tell us a bit about the history? You started in 2004. Actually, how did you start?
Yeah, sure thing. One of the early members, who's unfortunately no longer with the group, got the gift of a typewriter for his birthday from the woman he was seeing at the time. And he was very excited to have this typewriter, and he was in a bar, and he just started kind of typing along to the music that was playing, and it was understandably annoying the staff there, and they asked him to stop playing, and he said, "It's all right. I'm the conductor of the Boston Typewriter Orchestra." And thinking there was something to that idea, he decided to get a bunch of guys together and try to do something with it. And we all just kind of ran out and grabbed typewriters where we could find them. It was a group of about 5 or 6 of us early on.
And do people actually come and bring you typewriters? And now that you're known about in Boston, do you actually get them coming to you, the typewriters now?
Yeah, we get a fair.
Go ahead, Derek.
Oh, sorry. We get a fair amount of donations, yes, but we can also find them in secondhand shops, yard sales, occasionally online, but we do get a lot of donations. Yeah.
That's wonderful. So, Brendan, tell us more about this comedy mix that you put into the work. It's quite obviously there. I mean, it's wonderful, but that mix, what does that bring in for you from your audience side? And tell us how you choose where you're doing performances, because you're quite regularly performing. Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was a little difficult, obviously, this year, but we've played everywhere from like shoebox-sized gigs to big corporate events. We played libraries, museums, punk rock shows, dive bars, you name it. Basically, if there's no dough, then there's no show. But we're not adverse to going out to playing anywhere. I'm sorry, what was the other question? Oh, how do we figure out comedy? So as you can tell, we're a bunch of cards, and so I think the BTO is an interesting combination because there's about half of us have either semi-pro or pro band experience coming into it. I mean, Derek is still in a metal band. I used to be in a sort of a new wave band. Chris is a drummer. Jay is a DJ. So, I mean, we all kind of have a musical background. And I think we wanted to do this as a sort of like hey, let's continue doing band-related projects, but not having to like worry about making it. I mean, and, like no one's getting in the van to tour the Boston Typewriter. But I mean, that's just, I mean, we have done shows out to Chicago and down to DC. And, if England wants to bring us over here, then, let's get in the horn and talk, we'll do it. But it's not, this is not a priority. And so I think we sort of juggle that, how can we be as creative as possible? Vaibhav was saying earlier, like the sort of limitations of the typewriter creates a good art. And that's totally true because, I mean, we have to sort of make some kind of music out of a machine that's not designed to make music. So it's the challenge of sort of doing that and then knowing that we're ridiculous and sort of finding threading the needle of like, oh, this is actually cool, but you can laugh along with us, kind of thing.
Yeah. So, actually, Derek, going back to you, are there other typewriter orchestras in the world? Do you have links with any of them, or do you know what else is happening out there? Have we got any in Europe?
No, not that I'm aware of. I mean, we've come across a few that appear to have maybe done a one-off performance here and there. I think I saw a group in Sweden, a group in New Zealand, and a group in Russia, but I don't think anybody's doing this solely as a main gig. I think it's more of kind of like a curiosity thing for them.
So you are unique, definitely. And how many you must have been about 10 or 12 of you playing then, but I'm sure you go up and down in size. And how do you bring in new members? Do you do workshops, or do people just come in? How could we join in?
Well, I mean, like the joke is, well, okay, it's not a. How do you get into the band? Usually through invitation. You know, a lot of us. Oh, hey, I know somebody who would probably definitely be on board with this, and so we tap them to come out and I mean, basically, the Boston Typewriter Orchestra is a drinking club that has a typing problem, so we meet up in Jay's attic and have a couple of cases of beer and then bang on some typewriters. And so it boils down to charisma, creativity. In terms of size, I think the smallest show we did was 3 people, and that one was very interesting. It was very minimal, but we've ballooned up to 10 and 11. There was only 6 in that clip that we showed, but I think 5 or 6 is the sweet spot for a decent typewriter orchestra show, and it rotates too. I mean, we have probably. I mean, well, the joke I was going to say earlier is that the Boston Typewriter Orchestra is like the Hotel California. You can come in and do a show or a rehearsal, but that's it. You're in the band forever. You can never leave. And so Derek took some time off, but the pull was too strong. We got pulled right back in. So
Right.
That's how it works. So
when you're with you, you're with you. So, and are you recording and putting stuff out that we can download online? Is there stuff for us to get from the web from?
Oh yeah, well, we just put out a new little sort of EP called Workstation to Workstation. Oh, there it is. Little Bowie homage. We're big Bowie fans, and that just came out, and we're actually working on a remix record. In the time of COVID, you just kind of have to find new ways to be creative, and we figured, well, we've got all these stems, so what can we do with it? And just that sort of thing. Yeah.
I mean, have you been? I mean, I know obviously you're both in Boston, in Massachusetts at the moment, but
Yes.
and you're in your own homes, aren't you? Like we all are at this point in time, streaming from our homes. Have you been doing any of these streaming rehearsals that are happening between musicians and theatre people and dance people, where they are getting together and still trying out? Quite complicated, but to play together, even though you are remote.
Yeah, it is tough. We did. Derek, go ahead.
Rehearsal's been kind of hit or miss. We have been meeting online regularly just to basically hash out band business. But as you can imagine, COVID, not just for us, but for everybody, has forced performance into a video-based medium. And we've been putting together videos, on our own time. There's not a whole lot that we can do contemporaneous with each other, but in terms of putting together something that's edited and pieced together from various footage, that's been pretty good. So.
Well, it's incredibly creative, and I love the kind of structured improvisation in the way that you're working, and the allowance of individual to come through, but into that whole to make the whole piece happen. It's very special in that way. So I know that we do have another track to play us. So actually, I'm going to just check the chat room. Oh, no, that's fine. I'm good on time here. So I'd like to say thanks very much, Derek and Brendan, for joining us and for giving us such a fantastic evening. And also, of course, to Keira and to Vaibhav too. Now, you will be able to find out about everybody's work on their respective websites, which will be put up into the chat bar for you, or possibly they're there already. So, and of course, don't forget the Being Human Festival continues now until the 22nd of November. So do check out beinghumanfestival.org. It's very simple. You can just click on the days and find the different events that are coming up, all online this year. So no excuse, really. Very special, some of the stuff that's there. And to close the event in style, we leave you with another track from the Boston Typewriter Orchestra called Malort. And this has been recorded at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. And we play this in memoriam to Jeff Breeze.
Smash it up! It's green!